You've seen the videos. Spain looks like heaven on earth. Golden beaches in Malaga, wine that costs less than a bottle of water, long, sunny lunches that stretch into the afternoon. Everyone looks relaxed, glowing, sipping espresso on cobblestone streets. Instagram Spain is seductive. It feels like the cure for burnout, the promise of a slower, more joyful life. But here's what most people don't realize. Spain is beautiful, but it is not designed to make it easy for outsiders. Especially if you're a Black American thinking about moving here, that easy life image falls apart pretty quickly once you start dealing with the real Spain, the one behind the tapas and terrace photos. Spain is one of the most bureaucratic countries in Europe. Everything has paperwork. Everything has a line. To get a residency card, to rent an apartment, to open a bank account, you'll fill out forms, wait for stamps, and then fill out more forms. You can't rush it. You can't talk your way through it. Spain moves on its own clock, and foreigners quickly learn that efficiency isn't part of the culture. The problem isn't that Spain is disorganized or broke. It's that Spain doesn't need you. It's not desperate for expats or foreign money the way some countries are. It's an old society, proud of its traditions, with a strong sense of who belongs. The system works for the people who grew up in it, and everyone else just has to figure it out. That's the truth most people miss when they romanticize moving here. You can fall in love with Spain's charm, but you also have to respect its stubbornness. Spain will let you visit. Spain will let you fall in love. Spain will not easily let you stay. That's the part that shocks most people. You land in Madrid or Barcelona, you feel that energy, the late-night laughter, the smell of olive oil and sea breeze, and suddenly you think, I could live here. But wanting to live here and being allowed to live here are two very different things. Let's start with the non-lucrative visa, the one most Americans go for. On paper, it sounds perfect. You can stay in Spain for a year, renewable for up to 5 years. But here's the catch. You can't work. Not even remotely for an American company, technically. The Spanish government expects you to come with proof of financial independence. Around 28,000 to 32,000 US dollars a year sitting safely in your account, and not just for show. They check again at renewal. You have to prove your money didn't just appear for the application and vanish afterward. And that renewal? It's not guaranteed. You have to show tax records, proof of health insurance, and continued income. Miss one document or get a bureaucrat on a bad day, and your renewal can be denied. It's the kind of system that tests your patience and your paperwork skills. Now, a lot of people are excited about the digital nomad visa, the new one that supposedly opens the door for remote workers. And yes, it's real, but it's not nearly as flexible as influencers make it sound. To qualify, you must have a remote employer, not just freelance clients. You need contracts proving you work for a company outside Spain, consistent income, and often several months of tax documentation. If you're self-employed, things get trickier. Spain wants stability on paper, not creativity. And even if you check every box, Spain can still say no. The law allows discretion. Sometimes applications get rejected simply because a document was in the wrong format or translated incorrectly. That's not corruption, it's bureaucracy. It's a country built on systems that favor citizens, not newcomers. Then there's the student visa, which is probably the most common entry point. Many people use it as a stepping stone. Enroll in a Spanish language school or a master's program, get a visa, and figure things out from there. But student visas come with limits. You can only work part-time, and only if the job connects to your studies. And when your program ends, the visa ends with it. Renewal isn't automatic. If you can't transition to a new legal status, you're out. This is where a lot of hopeful expats hit a wall. They realize that every visa path has a ceiling, and that ceiling is lower than they expected. Spain's immigration system wasn't built to attract long-term settlers. It was built to manage visitors. That's a subtle but important difference. Here's what that means in real life. You might be sitting on a beach in Valencia, sipping sangria, thinking you've cracked the code to happiness, but the clock is ticking. Your paperwork expires, your landlord needs your updated residency card, your bank freezes your account until you renew your visa. The paradise moment disappears into a pile of forms. The solution? If you truly want to live in Spain, you have to treat it like a long-term relationship, not a vacation fling. That means learning the visa laws months in advance, budgeting for lawyers and translations, and accepting that the process will move at a pace you can't control. It's not glamorous, but it's the difference between staying legally and packing your bags early. Because Spain isn't cruel, it's just careful. And if you understand that, you'll navigate the system instead of fighting it. Let's talk about the fantasy that sells faster than Spanish wine, the cheap apartment with ocean views dream. TikTok makes it look effortless. An expat walks into a sunny flat with tiled floors and a balcony over Barcelona, paying half of what rent costs in Atlanta. But that's not how it works when you actually try to live here. Spain's housing market is one of the hardest parts of moving. To rent long-term, you need what's called an NIE number, basically your foreigner ID. It's required for nearly everything, from renting a flat to opening utilities. And here's the twist. You often need an address to get the NIE, but you need the NIE to get the address. That's Spain's circular logic in action. Most newcomers end up paying extra for short-term Airbnbs while waiting for paperwork to clear. Once you find a place, be prepared for the deposit shock. In many cities, landlords ask for 3 to 6 months of rent upfront, plus proof of a Spanish guarantor. Someone who lives in Spain and will vouch for you financially. That can stop foreigners before they even start. Without local connections, many are forced to overpay through relocation agencies that charge steep fees just to get their foot in the door. And yes, discrimination exists, not the loud, violent kind you might fear in the US, but the quiet, coded kind. A landlord might suddenly say a flat is already taken when they see your face on the video call, or they might ask for more documentation than they would from a white European applicant. It's not always overt, but it's persistent. Spain does not have a history of anti-Black violence like the US, but it also does not have a history of caring about Black people either. That indifference can sting just as much as hostility. For Black Americans, this reality feels strange. You're not necessarily targeted, but you're not seen either. You exist in a kind of cultural invisibility. In major cities like Madrid or Barcelona, that might mean constant curiosity. People touching your hair, asking where you're really from, assuming you're African rather than American. In smaller towns, it can feel isolating, like living behind a cultural glass wall. The housing problem gets worse because Spain's major cities have exploded in price. In Barcelona and Madrid, rents have jumped over 40% in the past few years. Valencia and Malaga are catching up fast. Investors and Airbnb conversions have gutted the local housing stock. That means even locals struggle to find affordable places, and foreigners are competing in an already tight market. For many Black expats, this becomes a double burden, navigating financial barriers and social bias at the same time. But here's the good news. Spain still offers pockets of opportunity if you're strategic. Cities like Granada, Alicante, and smaller towns in Andalusia or the Canary Islands have lower rents and more welcoming communities. You won't find that Instagram glam, but you'll find peace, affordability, and real connection. The lesson here? Spain's housing system rewards persistence, not privilege. If you expect the market to open its doors for you because you're an American with savings, you'll be disappointed. But if you take the time to learn the system, find local agents, join expat and immigrant forums, and approach landlords in Spanish, you'll find places that never even make it online. So before you fall for the cheap life in Spain videos, remember, TikTok Spain shows the balcony. Real Spain shows the paperwork, the deposits, the waiting, and the quiet perseverance it takes to get the keys. Here's where things get real. Spain doesn't talk about race, not in the way Americans do. There's no national conversation about systemic racism, no public reckoning, no deep cultural language for it. On the surface, that might sound refreshing. No constant debates, no political shouting. But silence doesn't mean equality. It just means the topic is ignored. Spain's history with race is complicated. It once ruled much of Africa and Latin America. Yet inside its borders today, race remains something people see but rarely discuss. Colorism is real. African immigration is controversial. And when you arrive as a Black American, you enter a conversation that isn't really happening, but you still feel it. How you're treated in Spain often depends on how you look. If you have a darker complexion, many Spaniards will assume you're African. not American. They'll categorize you before you speak. Some will avoid eye contact. Others might treat you as if you're new to the country or lower on the social ladder. Once you start speaking English or an American accent in Spanish, their tone often changes. Suddenly you're American, not African. It's a quiet social shift, but you'll notice it. If you're lighter skinned, your experience can be completely different. Many light skinned Black Americans report few issues at all. They blend in until they speak, and then they're often treated with curiosity or admiration, the cool American effect. But even they acknowledge something uncomfortable. Their smoother experience is tied to their complexion. The hierarchy is silent but visible, and across all shades you'll be seen as a foreigner, always. Spain doesn't hand out social belonging easily. You can live there for years, pay taxes, learn the language, and still hear the phrase los extranjeros, the foreigners, when people refer to you. It's not always meant as an insult, but it's a reminder that you're not one of us. This shows up publicly too. Look at Spanish football, where racism plays out in front of millions. When Brazilian star Vinicius Jr., a player for Real Madrid, one of Spain's most famous teams, was called racial slurs during a match in Valencia, it wasn't an isolated event. Spanish stadiums have seen repeated racist chants aimed at Black players, from both opposing fans and sometimes their own. These aren't fringe moments. They're part of a pattern. The worst part? It's not always condemned the way you'd expect. Many Spaniards are shocked by accusations of racism, not because they deny what happened, but because they genuinely don't see it the same way. They'll say things like, "It's just football culture," or "They didn't mean it like that." The problem isn't hatred, it's denial. You may not be called the N-word, but you will feel the distance, the stares on the metro, the casual curiosity about your hair or skin, the way people shift from warm to polite once they realize you're not Spanish. None of it is violent, but over time, it wears on you. It's not the racism of confrontation, it's the racism of exclusion. For Black Americans used to open conversations about race, this can be disorienting. You can't fix what people won't name. There are no diversity trainings, no social justice movements at scale, no shared understanding that race shapes experience. Instead, there's a quiet cultural assumption that we're all equal, even when reality proves otherwise. The solution isn't to avoid Spain, it's to understand its context. Spanish racism isn't rooted in the same history as America's. It's less about hate and more about homogeneity. Spain was isolated for decades under Franco's dictatorship, cut off from global multiculturalism. Immigration is still relatively new here, so when Spaniards see Black people, especially confident, successful Black Americans, they're still learning how to respond. That means your job isn't to fight every moment, but to decide what's worth your energy. Learn the culture. Correct ignorance when you can. Find communities, African, Caribbean, American, where you're seen and understood. And most of all, remember that being invisible doesn't mean you don't belong. Sometimes it just means you're part of the first wave making space for others. One of the biggest surprises about Spain is how well the healthcare system works, if you're legal. Spain's public health care is excellent, accessible, and affordable, but it's not automatically available to everyone who steps off a plane. You have to be a legal resident, registered with the local government, and paying into the system. Once you are, you'll have access to world-class doctors, modern hospitals, and medication that costs a fraction of what you'd pay in the US. But here's the detail people forget. You don't get that coverage just by showing up. To get any visa, whether it's non-lucrative, digital nomad, or student, you must prove you have private insurance first. That means full coverage, no deductibles, and no co-pays. It's not optional. And yes, it's affordable compared to U.S. plans, often between $60 and $150 a month. But you can't skip it. Spain doesn't want foreigners draining public resources before they contribute to the system. Once you're settled, you'll see that day-to-day costs can be surprisingly low if you live like a local. Groceries, produce, and even dining out are cheap by American standards. You can buy a week's worth of fresh fruit, vegetables, and bread for what one lunch might cost in Los Angeles. A coffee in a cafe, €1. A bottle of decent wine, 2. Life can feel luxurious on less, but that's only half the story. Rent, on the other hand, is not cheap. In the popular coastal cities or capitals, you'll pay close to what you'd pay in a mid-sized U.S. city. A one-bedroom in Madrid or Barcelona can easily run $1,1200 to $1,800 a month, especially if you want something modern or near the center. Add utilities, which spike in winter or during heat waves, and the low cost of living myth starts to fade. And then there's income, or the lack of it. Spain's wages are low. The average salary is around $25,000 a year. A retail worker might earn $1,100 a month. That's not a typo. Spain's economy is built for locals who already have family housing or multiple incomes, not for foreigners starting from scratch. If you move here without outside income, it's almost impossible to maintain the lifestyle you see online. That's why so many successful expats have one thing in common: money that comes from outside Spain. Remote jobs, online businesses, pensions, or investments. The Spanish economy won't support the American cost of comfort. You can live slower in Spain, but you cannot live underprepared. If you arrive expecting to rebuild a full American lifestyle on local wages, you'll end up frustrated. But if you come with realistic expectations, ready to live smaller, cook at home, and embrace local rhythms, Spain rewards you with quality of life, not quantity of things. Here's the irony: Spain can make you healthier without even trying. You walk more, eat fresher, stress less. The culture itself encourages balance. People take time to talk, to eat, to rest. The siesta may be fading, but the mindset remains. Life isn't a race here. And for many Americans, especially Black Americans tired of grinding to survive, that change of pace can be healing. But it only works if you build your foundation first: your visa, your finances, your insurance. Without that, paradise turns stressful fast. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear: Spain isn't for everyone. It's ideal for retirees, for digital nomads with steady remote income, and for people who already speak the language or are willing to learn it. Those are the ones who thrive. They have the time, the patience, and the financial cushion to navigate a system that moves slow but steady. Spain is not an easy escape plan. It's not where you run when life in America feels too heavy or too fast. If you come here hoping for simplicity, you'll find bureaucracy. If you come looking for cheap living, you'll find high deposits and low wages. But if you come seeking a slower, more intentional life, one where time matters more than money, Spain can give you exactly that. To make it work, you need 4 things: money, patience, paperwork, and humility. Money gives you freedom. Patience helps you survive the red tape. Paperwork is your passport to stability. And humility reminds you that you're a guest in someone else's home. Without those 4, even paradise will push you out. The expats who succeed in Spain don't try to remake it in their image. They adapt. They learn Spanish. They respect local customs. They build friendships beyond the expat bubble. They stop expecting Spain to feel like America and start appreciating it for what it is: slower, older, layered, imperfect, but deeply human. The gift of Spain isn't comfort, it's perspective. It forces you to slow down, to listen, to live with less, and feel more. It teaches you that beauty doesn't erase struggle, and peace doesn't come from perfection. So before you book that one-way ticket, ask yourself what you're really chasing: escape or transformation? Because Spain can give you both lessons, but only one of them lasts. Spain is not a door. It is a test. And if you pass it, if you come prepared, patient, and willing to grow, you won't just live in Spain. Spain will live in you. If you're seriously thinking about life outside the US, don't do it blind. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to listen to our podcast. Every week, we discuss what starting over abroad really looks like: the good, the hard, and everything in between. Because moving abroad isn't about running away from something. It's about loving yourself enough to know you deserve better. having the courage to embrace something new, and the resilience to commit to building something better, one smart decision at a time.